Good evening. Welcome to the East Brandywine Township Board of Supervisors regular session for Thursday, September 20th, 2018. Tonight's agenda, I wanted everybody to know a recording device will be used during this meeting, and we're going to open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, public comment for non-agenda items, but before we get to that, just the rules for the public meeting established in Resolution 2001-08. The time allotted to each individual making a comment shall be 3 minutes unless otherwise set by the presiding officer. Additional public comment may be granted at the discretion of the presiding officer at the conclusion of the meeting. That said, public comment for non-agenda items. Yes, Mr. Whiteley. You're welcome.
Dennis Whiteley, 1199 Horseshoe Pike. Just had a couple questions pertaining to the business district in East Brandywine Township. I was here in February, the last meeting I was at, and I was discussing where the township's growth is expected to go with the development of Applecross. We've got 145 new houses across, beside Croppers. We've got, Applecross down here with the townhouses, but there seems to be no interest in building the community business-wise. And to prove a point, in the past 5 years, we've only lost more businesses than we've gained. If you look, we've lost a butcher shop, we've lost our grocery store, which we got it temporarily. We've lost Burger King, we lost the barber shop. Now we're losing the hardware store. These are basic needs for your community. And if for some reason we can't understand that losing basic needs for your community is a downward spiral, something's being grossly overlooked. So as an interested business person, I've spent a lot of my own money to try to enhance the township. And with that being said, I don't see anything that the township does to help promote anything for new entrepreneurs. In other words, are there any tax incentives? Anybody have any idea? Tax incentives for new businesses?
There are state programs that are out there to incentivize businesses, yes.
Okay, so with that being said, Scott, young entrepreneurs, when I started in business, I was 21 years old. I actually knew another person that was 20 years old that was trying to start a business in East Brandywine Township. When he tried to bring that business to Jason Winters' father's building down at the end of Bondsville, or on Bondsville Road here, he was told that's a non-conforming site, non-conforming this, non-conforming. We spoke about this back in February. And these changes are never made to try to enhance. That's why that building is sitting there empty. That's why we have empty lots that sit in this township for years, decades, and they're never utilized. And there's no interest on the township's part to recreate. I mean, we see $350,000 bathrooms going up in the township, park. We see millions of dollars spent on this, millions of dollars spent on the Bondsville project, millions of dollars spent on Rails to Trails. But it seems like there's no interest in the core. When you go through this township in the spring, there's no Memorial Day flags hanging out from the poles. Christmas time, there's no lights in this town. You just pass through it like it's a antiquated coal mine town that has collapsed. And without that, you're not going to build a core of businesses unless there's some kind of interest from the township to help nurture that. So we had spoken in February, and you had said, well, give me 4 or 5 months. So we're at 7 months in. And I'm just trying to bring to light, I spoke about this over a year ago this past February, to try to say, what is it that the township can try to do to help prosper? Because we can't continue to have buildings knocked down, empty lots, people driving through the township. They just head from here to Honeybrook. I mean, let's face it, Honeybrook has 5 gas stations, they have restaurants, they have bars, they have a hardware store that's thriving. When everybody says hardware stores can't make it, we got to go against Lowe's. Well, there's one in Morgantown that's thriving. There's one in Honeybrook that's thriving. They have restaurants. The thing with the township is they've been a dry township, and it's time to change that. It's time for change to happen, and regardless whether it hurts people's feelings or their old interests or whatever, it has to change. You can't sit back and wait for something to happen, because every time somebody brings something to the township, it's denied. Even when the pizza guy wanted to bring takeout beer there, after he spent tens of thousands of dollars in years of litigation to try to just get takeout beer at his pizza place. The township denied it.
Well, let's do one thing at a time.
Sure.
The referendum, you have to, and I could be wrong on this, but the way I understand it is it has to get done through the municipal primary. Am I correct on that? So that has to get done through the voters. So that is how the alcohol thing. Applecross Country Club did that for their country club, and they were able to pass it for their facility. It's the same way, so some of these things, it's the power of the people, the vote, is what can determine
Correct.
how that happens.
But the leaders of the township have to engage in that, and they have to say, okay, well, if we don't get any kind of liquor in here, we're never going to get anything other than Burger King,
But-
Taco Bell.
Okay, so
You know,
we're
it's
gonna
gotta
go one at a
change.
time, though.
Sure.
Now, the next thing, if we start playing judge and jury, and God forbid a business doesn't make it, our heads are on the plate. So we can't tell somebody, you should open this up, because people will take our word as gospel, and what if something doesn't work out for that business? So.
It's not that. I'm sorry.
I'm,
Go ahead.
I'm definitely with you, though, on the Memorial Day flags. We had talked about the wreaths and whatnot through the center of town and at the, during the holidays, we had talked about, there's 3 or 4 things we had talked about. 4th of July, I'm with you 100% on that. Going back to why some of our businesses don't thrive here, I mean, we're not doing anything to hold up the businesses from thriving, for sure. There's nothing that the township is doing that's hurting that. It's just, unfortunately, it's the crux of where we are sometimes.
Right, but what happens is, if you look in Thorndale, there's not a constant turnover, because you constantly have people going there to do business. So you have people that go there to do business, because there's many businesses to go there and do. You can go to whatever, you can go to the laundromat, and then you can go right down the street and get your car washed, and then you can go up the street and pick up your kid at daycare. And then when you get into this township, you have just a few basic needs, and therefore the people find it convenient to drive somewhere else to do their business. Now, recently, I watched one of the videos where it said that Luke was going to go down and watch a 10-day video, being filmed down at the park.
It was one day, and he took off his Saturday to go down and watch production. to make
Understood.
sure.
Okay, I understand. But I'm just going by what was on the township video. So, at what point does one of our township, either managers or assistant managers, go around to businesses and say, what is it that we can do to help your business thrive? Because I can tell you, Gary's Collision already came to me and said, Dennis, I spent $15,000 to enlarge my business so I can have more, business here and build a new building. And he said, I got $15,000 into this thing, and I went nowhere.
Well-
So you have you got to understand, there's over $1 million on my corner down there, okay? There's over $2.5 million if you want to buy the hardware store. There's $500,000 to $750,000 in order to bring that building up to snuff to make it some other kind of business. But with your ordinance being so restrictive, I mean, I would love to see Iron Hill Brewery in there in a heartbeat. But we've got ordinance against this and ordinance against that, and we've talked about this. But until you cut the reins on all these restrictions, you're never going to have anything. And we're trying to nurture interest for the people so we can be part of a community.
Well, let me, again, quickly, we do have a lot on the
Okay,
agenda
I
tonight,
understand.
but first of all, I don't think at any one given time, anybody up here would have any, we would love to see new businesses come in here. We love to see great ideas come in here. When those do come in here, we do talk about it. We discuss how it would be the best way to handle it, and if we think it will work. If we don't think it will work, we tell that person why. Not a lot of that has happened lately, to be honest with you. Regarding why Township isn't going out looking into ways to drum up new business, I'll be honest with you, Dennis, we are taxed up here. These guys are putting in round-the-clock hours trying to handle right-to-know requests and some of the other things that are coming up their way. So it's not like we have extra time to sit. And I'm not going to hire somebody to do that right now. Clearly, when things slow down, and I don't ever see it happening at the rate we're going right now, time will get spent on these things.
Is there a need then for a business organization to be developed through the township, just like you have the Parks and Rec, and you have, the rails, the trails, and you have the parks, and you have all these organizations, Historical Commission? Wouldn't there be a reason to have, it really is a reason to have a business improvement district?
Yeah.
Look what they've turned Phoenixville around. They took like something that was worse than Coatesville and made it better than Westchester in 10 years, okay? It needs to be that there needs to be some interest within the town, because otherwise you've got this big empty hole that attracts nobody. I mean, that's why I get in my car and I drive to Peddler's Village, because there's an attraction for me to go to. I get in my car and I drive to wherever to eat. I drive 30, 70, 80 miles if I have to go somewhere to eat, because that's where I want to go. But there's no attraction here. So without an attraction, you're not going to be able to give your town a courtship. That it's a tight, in a good community, that it has a business district to offer good things to its people. Otherwise, they just drive out of town. Everybody's like, there's so much traffic.
Yep. No, like I said, I don't want to kick the can. It is being addressed behind the scenes. I've had sit-downs with, not myself, but we have had sit-downs with Open Space on things with some of their property. So it's not a fast-moving process, but it is a process that's moving. I can promise you that.
Would it be possible before the end of the year that there could be a committee put together, that there could be a business improvement district?
I would have no problems with it whatsoever. And again, if you wanted to sheep herd that, I have no problem with that as well.
I don't live in the township, although I own property. Would I be able to be part of that as far as the leadership, or I have to stand out as maybe?
No, if you have property, I mean, a good idea is a good idea. Where it comes from, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay. All right, I thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you.
I just want to respond to one thing, because you made the statement that a pizza business came to the township to have beer and they were denied. That is patently false. It's untrue. We never denied them. We actually encouraged them to do the referendum, and they didn't file in time, which is why they didn't get on that municipal election. But to say that we denied a beer to a pizza shop or anybody in the township is totally untrue, because we have no control over whether they can get a liquor license or not.
Well, the gentleman that owns it had told me, this is what I'm going by what he told me, is that he performed all the tasks that the township needed to do, all the signatures, all the stuff they needed to do. And then when it came to be voted on, his words to me were, they told me that if they gave me the okay to do this, then they would have to do it for everybody else in the township.
Totally untrue.
Okay.
Because it has to
Totally
go through
false.
voter survey, that, again, it's part of the primary.
Right. Even to have takeout beer, just like you have takeout at Joe Burns'.
Alcohol is alcohol, and it's.
Joe
through the-
Burns was grandfathered because they were in existence before the referendum that made the township dry. So if somebody, if a pizza shop or anybody else wants to file the necessary paperwork in time so that they get on a municipal election cycle, it'll be on the ballot.
And
It's
just
not us.
just for a business to have it, or for the whole community to be able to have restaurants with beer?
You can't do it business by business. It's either the township is dry or it isn't dry.
Well, my suggestion is to pull up your pants and let's move forward, because you're never going to get any good restaurants. We're starving for food here. I mean, your fast food restaurants are nothing more than vending machine food. And I can tell you, you guys don't come here and eat every day. You get in your car and you drive somewhere where you can get a real meal. I mean, I've personally seen the East Brandywine Township Police. I followed them to Wawa in Downingtown to watch them get, coffee and sandwiches. Come on. I mean, when your own police department's leaving the township to get food, doesn't that kind of throw a signal up that there's not something right? And I'm not picking on them. I'm just saying. I understand they don't want to eat, out of a gas station every meal of the day, So let's do something to try to nurture. I'm up for help, and I just need an okay to do what it takes to get it. But I don't want to sit here and fight an uphill battle. There needs to be interest from you guys as well to help. And if it means turning some of your ordinances around to help nurture this instead of, I don't know when Pizza Mia is going to open, but it's like the next ice age till that poor guy gets open. I know there's been changes that he's had to make, but he's just opened a pizza shop, for God's sake. It's not like he's trying to bring in, undercover people from other countries and sneak them in the basement or anything. Just help the guy out and let him get in business so we can have more than one place to have pizza.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
No problem. Any other non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Board of Supervisors, August 16, 2018.
Move that they be approved as submitted.
I didn't get that over to Mary before she left for my changes. before she left for vacation.
How long can we hold these?
There's no
Okay.
set timeframe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll hold those until the next meeting, and then we'll move on to September 6, 2018. Can someone, Jan, can you make a note for Mary so that she knows that we bumped that again, just so that she's well aware of that?
Right.
Please, thank you so much. September 6, 2018.
I think they're actually September 7th. The minutes show September. It's two different places. It's-
Yeah, I have a friendly amendment to our own staff's. The 6th is correct. It
Yep.
does appear as the 7th in one location, and that's the third line of page 3. So I would recommend that if you take a vote to adopt them, you adopt them as amended.
Okay.
So moved.
And I second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, treasurer's report.
That's going to be me this evening, filling in for Mary, who is on a well-deserved vacation. One moment here, I'm working the cameras as well. There we go. All right. The balance of the general fund checking account is $2,240,456.71. The balance of the general fund's capital reserve is $702,888.28. The state fund, liquid fuels fund is $554,209.08. The referendum open space fund is $2,405,839.51. The open space, the saldo open space fund is $727,879,000.57, and the traffic impact account is $1,505,385.09.
Thank you. Let's take a minute to go over the finances.
You ready? I'll make a motion, we approve the disbursements as requested.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, staff committee reports, township managers report. Scott, please.
Thank you. This past Tuesday afternoon, I learned that PennDOT has recently requested a revision to the separate highway occupancy permit for stormwater management for the Bollinger Road Horseshoe Pike intersection improvements. This is a technical detail that I wasn't aware of, although it's not actually the township's responsibility, although we'll be involved. There needs to be an agreement with the township to oversee the ongoing maintenance of the stormwater facility that is already constructed in the Applecross development. It was also designed to handle the stormwater generated from the roadway improvements that are proposed, and the Applecross HOA will be ultimately responsible for the said maintenance, not the township. But we'll have the right to enter upon the property to make sure that the facility is being maintained properly. Pulte's attorney, Allison Zorro is working on that draft agreement and will be presented to Solicitor Camp for her review. Once the agreement's been approved, a revised application must be submitted by Pulte or their traffic engineer, McMahon and Associates, to PennDOT for their review. That review is expected, or I should say the review, once it's completed, should occur and the permit issued within 2 to 4 weeks. I met with Bob Hermley today. He replaced Bill Krieger with Pulte Homes. We discussed timing because at this point we're at the end of September. Construction would take approximately 60 to 90 days, which would take us well into December, and neither one of us felt that that was reasonable to expect that. So at this point, we're looking to construction beginning in late March of 2019, completed within a 90-day period. This also includes coordination of public sewer and water main connections across across Horseshoe Pike for the Mapleview project, which is also going to tie into the intersection improvements as they proceed, and they just started their construction from North Guthrie'sville Road. At their public meeting last evening, our ordinance task force discussed the County Planning Commission's review comments on our ordinance amendments that were submitted in August, or on August 10th and 13th. Task force has decided to forego for the time being making any revisions suggested by the county. At the present time, we'll look to make some revisions at some future date with other amendments that are currently pending review. The task force also established the date of the second public meeting, which is required by the County Planning Commission's VPP grant program. That date is Wednesday, October 17th at 7:30 p.m. Public is welcome to attend, of course, to hear brief summaries of each of the ordinance revisions, ask questions of the consultants who assisted our task force with this project. And again, that's October 17th. We have to have the project completed and all ordinances adopted by, I believe it's January 15th of 2019. Later this evening, the board will consider authorizing the required legal notice for the simplified method for stormwater management to be advertised in the daily local news. This revision will allow residents to complete a stormwater management application for small projects of less than 2,000 square feet, which create impervious surface of less than 2,000 square feet and earth disturbance of less than 5,000 square feet. The reason for this amendment is so these small projects will not require an engineered stormwater management plan. Basically, a table has been created based on soils that we know are typical in our area, and it's provided so the applicant can provide a sketch plan of an infiltration trench that's 4 feet deep and specify width and length of the trench based on the impervious surface that they're creating from things like a swimming pool, deck, or patio, or any other project that's less than 2,000 square feet. I believe it was last week while I was on vacation, Brandywine Valley SPCA submitted a re-revised 5-year contract to the Chester County municipalities that they serve. We met with the SPCA at West Goshen Township on the 16th of July, had several comments. They came back with a revised agreement and still had several of the primary concerns such as insurance, timeframes for pickup of animals. They wanted the municipalities actually to provide insurance for them, which we, as a group, refused to do. I've asked Solicitor Camp to review our contract, and I'm sure she's doing for several other municipalities. We want to execute the contract and take advantage of the discounted rate paid before January 1st of 2019. And the last item I have, or I'll say the next to last item I have, Dunkin' Donuts opened last Friday, September 14th, in the former Burger King building. I was a little surprised when I came to work Monday morning to find that had opened, but take advantage of one of the new businesses in the township. And the last item I have is that I sent an email to the board, which hopefully all of you saw late this afternoon, about the East Brandywine Baptist Church. You might remember that the church had approached the board about banner signs that they wanted to post announcing their 175th anniversary. At the time, the current signs ordinance did not permit this type of, it wasn't the type of sign, it was the number of signs and the length of time that the church wanted to have the banner signs up. I tried to explain, summarize what's going on, and in conjunction with Solicitor Camp, we're asking if the board is comfortable with moving forward with advertising the ordinance. Once it's advertised, then the day after, the church is permitted, or the township's permitted to grant the church's permit as long as it meets the guidelines of the pending ordinance, which is maximum of 100 square feet of these types of signs, and for not a period of not more than a year.
Yeah, and we had basically done this, so I'm okay with that.
I'll make a motion that we advertise the proposed revisions to our sign regulations.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Luke, back on, Assistant Township Manager's report.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. First, as my usual custom, I'd like to just go over the events that are going to happen between now and your next regular session. On September 21st, the final free movie in the park featuring Star Wars: The Last Jedi will be held at dusk. If that sounds familiar to you, it's because I presented it at your last meeting as well. And
I thought that was
date-
what you just did at the Bondsville Mill.
No, there was inclement weather on the original date, September 7th, so we have rescheduled for tomorrow night, the 21st. Please come out and enjoy this final free movie of the summer. And there's mixed feelings about the quality of it among nerds, but it's a good movie. On October 14th, the township will be hosting, Parks and Rec will be hosting on behalf of the township, a first fall festival. The Fall Harvest Festival on Sunday, October 14th, from noon to 3 at the community park will include your favorite fall time activities like pumpkin decorating, trick-or-treating, hay rides, food, and plenty of games for kids. Kids can dress in costume and participate in a costume parade. We look forward to everyone coming out and enjoying some of your favorite fall festivities. I'd also like to report on a couple events that have happened since our last meeting that were unusual, one of which was the filming of a movie out at the Bondsville Mill Park on September 8th. I'll start with on September 6th, this board approved a waiver of our rights to the finished product and also a waiver of our liability should anything go wrong during filming. On Saturday, September the 8th, a film crew spent the day out there. It was very interesting to observe, and part of the reason I was gung-ho to experience it firsthand is that starting in October, our Parks and Rec Committee will be examining all of our policies relative to usage of our facilities. We've received a number of requests for types of events that we have no policy for, and I'll list three. One is filming a movie in a community facility. Two is reserving tennis courts for league play. And 3, reserving the trails in the park. We have policies for reserving pavilions, and we have policies for reserving fields, but we have requests periodically to reserve the trails for in-the-park 5K races. So the committee's going to spend a little time coming up with a policy recommendation for the board to consider in the near future. So I feel that was a day well spent to discover what sort of things staff needs to do in order to accommodate such a request. The other event that's happened since the last time we met was on August 30th. The township hosted the Chester County Town Tours and Village Walks at the Bondsville Mill Park. The event was a tremendous success, and every time slot we had, we were breaking tour groups into 20 people, was full. And so somewhere between 200 and 220 individuals, some went directly to the park, went through. My thanks to the many man-hours of volunteer time that went into making that event as successful it was, and that includes members of this board who spent their evening with us on that night. Thank you all. The 2017 Recycle Performance Grant, also known as the 904 grant, is due on September 28th. Township staff will be reporting that 886 tons of recyclables were collected at curbside, 145 tons were collected at our drop-off center, and a further 133 tons were diverted from the landfill via private commercial contracts in the township.
Thank you.
I have actually one more. I'm
Okay.
sorry. There's a reverse to my page there. This is an update on the progress from the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee has not met since their inaugural meeting on August 7th, but at the conclusion of their August 7th meeting, the request to department heads to file their wish list for 2019 has been made. All committees and all department heads have now responded. The committee will meet next Tuesday to hear from those individuals about their budget requests. And then they will meet again a week later on October 3rd to begin the task of preparing a balanced budget for the board's consideration at your November work session.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to well, Matt's not here, but the roadmaster report, is that Scott?
For the month of August, there were 38 building permits issued, 5 zoning permits issued, total fees collected by the building department, $44,403.50. It's respectfully submitted, Naran King, Building and Code Secretary. And one other thing that I'll add, earlier this year, I tasked those that are involved with the building and zoning permits, not only the issuance of it, but the administrative part of it, to take a look at all of the permits that we issue, to come up with realistic cost figures for actually administering the building and zoning codes department. That would include everyone who is involved in any part of the process and how much time is spent on each type of permit, so that we can actually have a defensible fee schedule. Because what has been the previous process is determine what everyone else around us is doing, and then taking a look at, very generically, time involved by township staff and consultants. And we're going to try and put that in more of a format that we can actually see whether we're correct, whether we're high or low or right on target. So I'm hoping to have that done by year end, and early in 2019, present a revision to, or proposed revisions to, our fee schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to go to the
Police Department.
police department. Yes.
Just a question to and unfortunately the township roadmaster's not here, but there's a substantial sinkhole on 322 where the sewer main goes across in front of the Mama Lena's building. It's getting substantially worse month and month and month, and it seems like it's getting worse. Is there any concern?
I think that's PennDOT.
PennDOT.
Yeah.
We've reported that one to PennDOT for at least 3 years, And the manholes on Bondsville Road, same thing. They're trying to say that they're being caused by our sewer lines. We've investigated every one of them, and it's not coming from, it's not siphoning in from our sewer lines. All of them, we feel, are subsistence from the springs that are under the roads. And I've spoken to, I can't remember the gentleman's name, who's our liaison, but he was supposed to set up a meeting with Mr. Van Loo, myself, and Bob Kennedy for this week, and we never got any dates back from him. No, it's not. Ken actually is not a PennDOT employee. He is with an engineering firm that basically leases Ken to PennDOT for the inspections. I also suggested that Ken be part of that because he was part of the construction of the sewer main extension down Bondsville Road, as well as the Aqua's water line extension that just occurred the last 2 weeks, or previous 2 weeks.
Would it be possible for the township, the excessive amount of money they have in the future road improvement fund, to be able to pay for that with PennDOT doing it?
See, we're not allowed to touch PennDOT's roads.
Well, I mean, not to do it themselves, but say to PennDOT, we'll pay for it if you do it.
You're already paying for it, they're just not doing it. PennDOT's, that's how, but we can't, the township can't touch PennDOT's roads.
Not unless we have an agreement with them. There are some municipalities, I know West Brandywine does that on some state roads, where they'll do winter maintenance, but that type of maintenance, no. All we can do is try and get them to come out and address the issues, and it's just falling on deaf ears, unfortunately.
Chief?
Good evening. The Police Department report for August 2018, we recorded 2,418 incidents. We completed 207 investigations. There were 10 criminal arrests, 1 summary arrests. We had no juvenile petitions. We investigated 11 traffic accidents, issued 124 traffic citations, 27 traffic warnings. We completed 80 vacation house checks, and officers logged 7,886 miles of patrol. Training completed for the month. Every member of the department has completed their annual MOPEC certifications for handgun, shotgun, and AR-15 rifles, and Officer Ryan Canzanese completed Narcan training. We had no correspondence for the month, and the board, you have copies of the monthly investigations and the officer activity reports.
Thank you. East Brandywine Fire Company report. No, you don't want to sit up here with us?
That's fine. Good evening, everybody. August report for East Brandywine Fire Company. The company responded to 65 total fire and EMS emergencies. Of those 65, 26 were in East Brandywine Township. We had an average of 12 persons responding during this period of time. We also conducted 5 training sessions with an average of 23 persons who were in attendance. Also during this period of time, we used 88 gallons of East Brandywine Township fuel. Aside from our emergency responses, we participated in Community Day. I'd like to thank the Parks and Rec Department for the invitation. They put on a very nice event. Additionally, we conducted our fireworks that evening, which was well attended. And then we also, this past weekend, participated in the crop salute to heroes. So we were up there throughout the morning and afternoon and met with a lot of the community members. It's a monthly report for August.
Thank you. Old business, I don't believe we have any, so we're going to go into new business. The Delaware Valley Health Trust proposal. Luke?
Yeah, that is me this evening. We're up against a deadline from a proposal from the Delaware Valley Health Insurance Trust. You heard from them, in, I believe, August. They have a proposal to replace our incumbent health insurance provider, which is, well, the network is Independence Blue Cross, and the broker is Kistler Tiffany KT Benefits. At the conclusion of their presentation to the board, I was asked by members of the board to get a third proposal, this one from Benecon, and I asked Lisa, the administrative assistant for the township, to reach out to them, and they have not responded after a number of tickles about making a presentation to the board. So this evening, we have a decision point before the board, and that is to stay with our incumbent provider or to accept the proposal from the Delaware Valley Health Insurance Trust. I can answer any questions you have about their proposal or what staff has done to vet them and their provider, Aetna.
Yeah, I would love to hear, I mean, you guys are behind the scenes, so.
Right. Well, this represents a little more than just a different provider. This is a different model of acquiring health insurance. Delaware Valley Health Insurance Trust is a cooperative, so this is self-insurance. It's similar to the model that Benecon offers, but it's not exactly the same. It is pretty significantly different than the private sector insurance that we're buying now, which is a private brokerage, KT and IBX. What I can tell you that we did by way of our due diligence in considering their proposal is their proposal has been put before the police officers and the rest of staff to make sure that there be no network concerns about a switch in provider. I'm not aware of anyone's concerns that they're going to lose their primary care physician in the change. We've also called other municipalities who use Divot and have heard nothing but positive reviews. We have a proposal, in terms of cost, we have a proposal about how much health insurance would have cost them if we used them this year, which is not a particularly useful number, except that you can determine that it would have been less. But we don't have in hand quotes from either the incumbent or the Divot. We anticipate a 5% savings.
And is this a set amount of time? Is this a year? Is this a commitment?
You know, it is, I will say that once you enter a cooperative, it is harder to leave. I'll just say that right up front. It is the business model of these cooperatives that they want to retain their members and pool the savings over time. It is not something you could not leave.
They drag you back in?
Yeah, there is no term that you could not leave. But I think in the interest of just going on the record in fairness, these cooperatives are harder to leave
Right.
than the private sector.
Okay.
However, they also do generally save municipality money because of the lower overhead.
Right.
It's still being, so if I remember correctly, it's still, Aetna is providing the coverage, but they're not administering it, as we have now. As we have IBX administering, and then we have the other layer of KT Benefits that's assisting when there are problems. In this scenario, we've pooled our resources, so that's where the savings actually comes from.
And I saw the list of the other townships that were on it, so, I mean, I personally have no problem with it.
But would this start January 1st then? Is that the proposal?
Yes. As a holdover of the regional police department, we actually have 2 open enrollment periods. The township's staff open enrollment period is the calendar year, and the police department's is right at the end of the first quarter of the year. We would try to align the two. and have it be the calendar year starting January 1st.
Luke, is there an agreement that the board has to authorize, and is it done through an ordinance? I thought that there's some formal agreement that would have to be signed by the township. I didn't know if that had been presented to you yet from
Well,
David.
what's in your packet is just a simple, the statement is, we accept this proposal and rates as confirmed per this proposal effective,
I feel like,
and then the date.
Yeah, and I feel
I've not been prompted with a,
and I feel like there is something more, and
There
that
was a
would establish
5-year
the term and things like that.
I
So-
thought there was a 5-year commitment to do it, to Delaware Valley Insurance Trust.
So if the board wanted to go forward with it, I think there's a more formal contract that actually
Yeah.
has to be authorized, and it may even need an ordinance.
I don't remember that being discussed when they did their presentation
Maybe they
to
don't.
staff,
Yeah.
and then also the discussion at the August 2nd, I think, supervisors meeting.
Well, I mean, we can always,
We have time.
I thought I read on there the 21st.
they've asked for us to give them a yay or nay by tomorrow, the 21st, yes.
So barring any commitments to time period that you don't feel or we don't feel comfortable with, and barring any ordinance that has to go into effect, we could always do a preliminary, and then if that's needed, redact it.
Well, in response to that, Kristen, do you see the execution page that I see? It's at the end of one of those tables. It's actually the last page before we get to the next agenda item.
I find that hard to believe that's all that they're gonna require. Again, my memory is not the best, but I'm almost positive there's a more formal document that I reviewed on behalf of other municipalities, both in Callan and in West Goshen. A more formal plan document, so to speak, that has a lot of the details that the board might be.
Maybe you guys were the guinea pig setting it up for the,
Yeah, I
people at the
can't believe
end.
that that's all you need to do is sign that proposal there, but, I
But-
mean, it can be, if the board's comfortable with moving forward with it, then I think a vote should be taken tonight for that, and then you follow up tomorrow and find out what other documents, if any, need to be executed and what's the process.
Right, I guess my legal question to you is if the board approves staff to execute the proposal that you see in your packet, is there anything in there that we couldn't back out of?
There's nothing on this document that has a term, so no. I mean,
well, just those 5 points at the end of the last
right,
page.
so no, there's nothing here that specifically says that, what the term is, and that's, I think that was a good question to ask, how long you committed to being in this, and
3
how long are
years.
these?
It's 3 years. That's the
It does say
fifth-
3, yeah.
Fifth bullet point. Right above where,
Yeah.
I
mean,
apologize
Tough to
for
read
having
because
missed
it's
that
very
key
small,
point.
but yeah.
it's 3 years.
Well, and we typically would do an RFP every few years anyway, yes?
Yeah, it's been about every 3 years.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I think my recommendation would be that if you're comfortable with the business terms of, that they're offering, to go ahead and approve that, and then follow up to make sure there's no other formal legal document that needs to be approved, and if there is, then obviously if you haven't signed that more formal agreement, that gives you another chance to revisit it based on the terms of that legal document.
Yeah. Jane, get that? I'll make that motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we're going to go on to proposal to amend the 2016 multi-municipal agreement to fund the East Brandywine Fire Company. And this is Jason and Luke.
Good evening. East Brandywine Township met with representatives of West Brandywine Township as well as the East Brandywine Fire Department back in August 22nd, 7 p.m. to discuss 2019's multi-municipal funding for the East Brandywine Fire Department based on their prospective budget that was submitted as well as other factors. And when we left the meeting, it was obvious that West Brandywine had requested to amend the formula, and due to the school district's recent 9% tax increase. So we spent most of the evening basically trying to figure out a formula that would work best for their needs, as well as the fire companies, as well as ours, that would be, in our opinion, fair across the board. Previously, in 2018, it was 25% fire calls, 25% quick response service calls, 25% population, as well as 25% assessed valuation. And moving forward to 2019, the prospective new funding formula is 15% fire calls, 5% quick response calls, 40% population, as well as 40% assessed valuation. So as a board, we need to discuss what that entails as far as our obligation in East Brandywine would go from 53% up to 60, a little over 60%. West Brandywine would go from 40% to 36%, and Upper Euclid would go from 3.7% to the same, about 3.78%. So that's kind of where we're at right now as far as trying to approve that formula, and then we can discuss the budget and go from there. So,
I don't understand so if I understand what you just said, this was precipitated by the school district tax increase, and I don't understand what that has to do with the funding formula.
well, West Brandywine is at the point that they're gonna have to raise their taxes again to meet their obligation under the old formula. And in fact, they're still planning on doing that to fund Wagontown Fire Company. So they're,
Does
They
West Brandywine
designated-
have a fire tax like we do? Does West Brandywine have a fire tax like we?
excuse me,
Sorry.
oh, I'm sorry. They did commit, the full amount that they could from their general funds, and then they'd be raising their fees to help support Wagontown. So that kind of leaves East Brandywine. I mean, you have to put the fire company is in our township, so you have to understand the importance of that. But basically, it comes down to Freedom Village, and a lot of calls to the workers there cannot. If someone falls, they can't pick them up. They changed their policy, even though it's they can't help them. So that kind of leaves in West Brandywin's mind, a lot of the calls were from that, and that's within their township, that they feel that should be reevaluated to try to help them get over the hurdle forward.
But it sounds to me like you haven't given me any reason to change the funding formula, and maybe a little background is appropriate. I negotiated that contract with Doug Smith at West Brandywine Township over 2 years ago. And the whole reason that we sat down and created this multi-municipal funding agreement for the fire company was we had a 20-year history of West Brandywine not contributing what I considered to be their fair share toward fire services. And so we had one very difficult year, and fortunately, with the assistance of the people in the fire company, Doug Smith and I sat down with people from Upper Euclid as well, and we looked at other similar agreements that were in effect in Chester County with other municipalities that were served by multiple fire companies. When I started that process, as far as I was concerned, it should have been 50% fire calls and 50% QRS, because to me, that's the operating expense of the fire company. I was persuaded that that was not completely fair to look at just the services that were provided, but to include a factor for population and assessed value, because that represented, the population represented the potential calls that the fire company might have to go out on, and the assessed value represented the, I'll say, the wealth of the community or the ability of the community to support the fire company. And we came up, wasn't completely arbitrary, but we came up with the 25, 25, 25, 25. To now skew it so that it's 80% of the formula is population and assessed value dependent, and only 20% of it is based upon the number of calls, makes absolutely no sense to me at all.
No, it doesn't, but we actually had to work this out, not how we would choose to, basically to come up with a formula where we could just move forward from now on, but we had to go with what they're willing to contribute, which is, and it was either,
Or leave it. Take it or leave it, sort of, from them, right?
Well, it's not take it or.
No, I'm saying that's how they presented it,
that's how
that
it
they
was.
basically.
It was either you're
'cause I
gonna,
asked the
it's
same
either you
question
can
to
do
Blue.
this, or we're gonna fund, we're not gonna have
Right.
anything.
Well,
And that was the choice that we had to do. So we were either gonna have $130,000 contributed from West Brandywine, or we're gonna have zero.
So when we
So-
started this process, the whole idea was that we would get together and agree on what the budget was for the fire company, and then it would be applied through this formula to determine each municipality's contribution. Last year, they gave us a similar argument and said they didn't have the money. So the fire company, to their credit, agreed to modify their budget in order to bring their budget within what West Brandywine wanted to contribute, which to me was completely backwards. Now they're coming back and saying, you know what? We're going to change the formula to match what we want to spend, not because it makes any sense. And to me, that it's totally inappropriate. It's not fair to the residents of East Brandywine Township. We have an excellent fire company. We have had a commitment for many, many years to fully fund the fire company, and they need to have the same commitment.
Well, I agree with you, but it came down to a situation where they're gonna receive the allocated funds that they had offered or not. And not, I'm not saying that we can't fully fund them. I mean, we have, our tax collectors, he has collected 1.8% over the budget, which is roughly $55,000. We have the one-time fee from Bondsville Mill to reconstruct, was supposed to be for a 1-year go-around for them. We could allocate some funds from the parks, from the open space for parks to help out Bondsville Mill. And I mean, I think that we can make up the difference. It's just that it's not, no one's happy about it.
All right, so I have two things. One, there was a page that maybe I'm missing it, but it was, no, there was a page that had the stats for 2017.
Are you talking about the calls for service? I have brought that up on the screen.
Yes, yes,
I'm going to
yes.
go ahead and project it.
Okay, so it was clear. Can you bring it up on the?
Yeah, you can see it on your screen, but.
So it was clear that East Brandywine, we were up with fire-related calls. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. 39, we had 39%. Or how do you read this? Because responses versus service area. Service area 55.08, we had 39%. West Brandywine had 28. I'm reading it this way. West Brandywine had 28. No doubt about it. We used fire services more. For the medical, we had 34% and West Brandywine had 64%. So that blows us out of the water. But that is what I was asking the other day, mostly related to the Freedom Village community, which is in West Brandywine. And this may be a better suited question for you guys, has anybody talked to Freedom Village and said, hey, your municipality can't foot the bill for our services to what they agreed to, we come to you guys
Profit-making company.
They're supposed to be 25% more than any other township, help us out. I'm just curious.
I think it's a larger question, Kyle, and Mayor.
Absolutely. Because I think you're the only one who knows the answers to these questions.
So, recognizing, this is obviously an important topic for the fire company, correct? And recognizing there's going to be people who are going to be watching this in their homes over the next few weeks. I think it's probably important to give a little bit of a background because I don't want anyone to be misled by conversations that are occurring because understandably you've not completely been involved over the course of time. So just as sort of a refresher, the multi-municipal committee, right, was formed by the township supervisors, and it was a way to address a shared service across municipalities. East Brandywine Fire Company serves East Brandywine Township, parts of West Brandywine Township, and Upper Euclid Township. So the idea was it helped us in a couple of different ways. Number one, it helped from a funding perspective, identify how best to handle this shared service. The other thing which it is intended to do was to streamline the process in order to get our funding approved. So instead of going to each township, meeting with the supervisors and the Citizens Finance Committee and getting approval, it's really one meeting with representatives from each township. Typically, it's a supervisor and then someone from the staff, often the manager. So to that end, we've been through this cycle now 3 times. We go through an incredibly rigorous process of which we present our budget. We have asked and answered questions surrounding each line item in the budget. And I don't think there's any question with regard to the funding that has been requested. It comes down to how that then funding is split up. I will tell you that it creates an enormous amount of anxiety on the part of the fire company because it's done on a yearly basis. One of the things that we are advocating for is longer term commitments in terms of contracts, for instance, 5 years. But it also makes it very difficult to plan. While we have our budget in place, we have in place apparatus replacement as a part of this. So we've done, really frankly, all the heavy lifting. We've justified each line item in the budget. And to that end, it comes down to how is it then funded. But we go through this process every year. So imagine trying to, run your family budget, not knowing what you're going to be bringing in from year to year. Incredibly difficult to do. So we've gone through this process 3 times. I will tell you that at the meeting that we attended in conjunction with Jason and Luke, they were the representatives from East Brandywine Township, the West Brandywine representatives, who included Supervisor Joe Morris, their township manager Dale Barnett, a representative from their Citizens Finance Committee, and their financial person Bonnie Lucy. They wanted to challenge, and I say challenge, they wanted to enter into a discussion surrounding the formula by how the budget is divvied up. Now, by the multi-municipal committee contract, that's decided upon by the supervisors and the leadership from the 3 townships. The fire departments aren't involved with that. So during that meeting, we presented our budget. We were asked and answered questions surrounding our budget line items. We then left the meeting, and then this formula is negotiated by the representatives from the township. We were privy to their presentation, of which they feel as though, based on a variety of factors, and I don't have all those factors this evening, property tax, school tax, their percent increases, that they came with rationale as to why they wanted the formula changed. So I will tell you this, that from a fire department perspective, at the end of the day, we provide an incredibly valuable service. We provide probably some of the highest quality emergency service anywhere in the state. We train routinely. We have the most robust fire prevention program, educating 2,500 kids. We're involved in community events. I will tell you that it would be our recommendation at the end of the day to approve whatever has been negotiated. I wrote down the numbers. This is the first time hearing them. So I'm reacting, right, as you're reacting. But if I heard this correctly, it was 15%, 5%, 15% for fire calls, 5% for QRS calls, 40% for population, and 40% for assessed value of homes. Is that correct, Jason? Okay. So, which then changes your requirement of the budget. I think it went from, if I understand this correctly, 53 to 60%, which, and again, we were quickly trying to do the math. I think that corresponds to a $28,000 increase for East Brandywine Township.
I heard 40.
I might be wrong. I'm just,
Approximately 40.
okay, so 2840, okay. I will tell you this, and I've shared this with Supervisor Fisher. I know I shared this with Supervisor Winters. Right now, I think sort of the perception of the township is that we, East Brandywine Township, supplements West Brandywine Township in terms of this service. I often say, and I've said it for many years, you may want to look at that, that West Brandywine Township supplements East Brandywine Township. And the reason why I say that is the fixed cost of providing this service really doesn't change, okay? But in the event, let's say that for whatever reason, you were to lose West Brandywine Township. You're going to lose all of the funding that they provide. That's just one aspect of it. Additionally, you're going to lose shared fuel service. On top of that, you're going to lose relief monies. And then lastly, you're going to lose the ability to direct mail fundraise in that community. So on our direct mail fundraiser, we get a 25% rate of return. So to that end, what that ultimately means is the burden that East Brandywine then would carry would be significantly higher because your fixed costs aren't going to change. You're now, the taxpayer, will just make up all that additional money. So while I recognize it may be difficult in, or it may be difficult in principle to wrap your head around, I also recognize that, frankly, West Brandywine is served by 2 fire companies. And go ahead.
Because you just said, this is my ignorance. Are you your own entity?
Yeah.
Because you're saying, well, the burden's on us. Well, why wouldn't another township possibly step in and say, hey, we would love to have the fire department help us with our department? I mean, it's hard for me to fathom that West Brandywine's the only game in town. You know, we've got other municipalities nearby that maybe you know what I mean? Maybe they aren't the only game in town.
So,
And I'm just thinking out loud.
Kyle, I don't necessarily know if I quite understand the premise of your question. Are you suggesting that we go out to other municipalities, for instance, say Downingtown or say Honeybrook, and essentially say, would you like our services?
That's absolutely what I'm saying.
I would suggest that that would create an untenable situation for the fire company, and one that we would absolutely not pursue
Okay.
with 100% certainty.
Well,
You would create utter chaos within the Chester County Fire Service.
Okay, and I'm not a firefighter, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's why
well, that
I'm
would be
asking.
to suggest that the police department say they want to go into Coatesville, and Chief Cozy go to Coatesville and say, how would you like to use our services?
But wouldn't West Brandywine, if they were to leave, wouldn't they have to go to another, you were
They would
saying?
have Wagontown do it all.
And so I can be clear, not every fire company provides the same level of service. Not every fire company has the same type of financial acumen. So one could hypothesize that another fire company may take whatever is offered, despite the fact that it's not a sustainable model.
And again, I don't know the that's why I'm asking you.
Well, that's why I'm here to provide them. And one of the ideas behind the multi-municipal committee was to eliminate this type of discussion, which we're happy to have, but oftentimes to go into the granularity that's required for understanding, it's typically not done in a 5 or 10 minute public meeting.
Well, and
Happy to have it,
Yeah,
but not the ideal situation.
I'll be honest with you, I've only seen 4 pages since you came in here today, 5 pages maybe, of breakdowns. I asked a couple questions, so.
Kyle, if I may, I just want to be clear, particularly for those watching. When you say you've been only provided 4 pages, that's not as a result of the fire company,
Oh, no, I'm not saying
right?
it
We have a
is.
very detailed budget. We have, we've gone through this process. We've taken the appropriate steps. So I just want to make sure, and I'm not, I just want to make sure that I'm clarifying, because if you make a comment like that or a statement like that, sometimes it may be misinterpreted by people to suggest
completely
that
understand.
the fire company hasn't provided this information.
But that
And,
said, I
your
have a-
point, which is one of my problems with doing this at this point in time, is if they wanted to change the formula, we should have had that discussion long before we got into this budgeting process.
But Jay, I think if you look at the multiple municipal contract, which again, I just want to clarify was, developed by the supervisors from the 3 townships and reviewed by their general counsel. If you look at the dates that are within the contract, certainly they're within the guidelines of the dates within the contract.
I disagree with you. They're not within the the contract dates that you're talking about are for the budgeting purposes. That assumes that the formula is fixed, which it was already fixed in the contract. So what I'm saying is, if they were going to if they should have anticipated this much earlier. And I don't know how my fellow supervisors feel, but my proposal to them at this point in time would be that this contract is fixed at this point. We can have a discussion about modifying the formula, but I think the numbers that they've come up with are totally arbitrary. If they had come in and said, well, look, we've looked at the cost and your equipment cost for QRS and fire calls, and here it is, and this is why we're thinking that we should change these numbers, I would listen to them. But I don't hear any of that. All I've heard so far is, we don't have the money, we don't want to raise the taxes, so we don't want to support the fire company.
But yeah,
So-
I agree. But they are raising taxes to help fund Wagontown. But they're.
Well,
What? Hold on. West Brandywine's raising their taxes to help Wagontown, but not East Brandywine Fire Department.
Well, their proposal was to allocate,
Their fire tax would be across the board for every resident, and it would be split up between the two fire companies, right? I mean, it's not, the raising and the tax wouldn't go just to Wagner.
they're proposing to raise their revenue by 40,000 to fund Wagontown.
Okay, I just have to be clear here. So I think that there's a little lack of clarity with regard to at least what we heard in the meeting. It's one of the reasons why I felt like the West Brandywine Township representatives, when they were in the meeting, they came with a presentation, they came with rationale. We walked away, recognizing what they were asking for this change. But
Is it a video presentation, or was it, they were there in person? Or was it recorded?
No.
I was wondering if there's any way we can see it,
Well,
because,
that presentation
Well,
should have been made
but-
to this board, not to
So
you guys.
that's back to my point with, first of all, I agree with you 100%. You guys should not be involved in this. And that was, I bought that hook, line, and sinker 3 years ago, which is why I spent all that time and energy to come up with this agreement in the first place. You guys should have a predictable funding source. You shouldn't have to worry about where the money's coming from. That doesn't mean you have a blank check, but I think that we owe the fire volunteers the financial stability so that they can focus on what they do so well. And I want to make it clear, because as you said, we have an audience out there, that East Brandywine is fully committed to supporting, at least I am, our fire services. You guys do an excellent job. When we started this, I can remember years ago hearing you guys shouldn't have to do chicken barbecues and all of that stuff, and I agree 100%. You spend so much time training, and then when we do have the calls, you guys are just fantastic. You are one of the better departments in the county, in my opinion. But I'm not hearing anything, and I'm not putting this to you, I'm not hearing any rational, logical reason to change this formula. And until I do, I'm not going to agree to do that. And I know that, at least I've heard, that their threat is that they're going to just pull out of. I can't help that. I don't think it's good for our fire department. I think the way things are structured in terms of service right now is good. I think they get excellent service from you, but I think they have to make their citizens aware that that's going to cost money, and they have to be willing to pay for it.
so I started out this with I wanted to get, I'm a numbers guy. I look at the numbers, I look at the facts. Unless I'm reading these maps wrong, I had sent one of your colleagues an email or a text message trying to get this, and unfortunately I had to get the response yesterday. What is the resident, and maybe it's on there, I don't think it is, but what is the resident count for West Brandywine versus East Brandywine?
I can't answer that question, Kyle.
Because it looks like on paper, double, on paper.
Yeah, I can't answer that question. So in the event, and I'll say this because you had made the comment, you emailed a colleague yesterday and you didn't get a response. So,
I actually ran into him at dinner, and I was asking
okay,
him.
but let me also be clear because again, it creates so I was chief for the last 5 years. This year I'm no longer chief, I'm the president. The chief and the deputy chief are at the West Brandywine Township meeting as we speak. Myself and the treasurer for our company are here this evening. So in the event that, and we've provided this data, right? I mean, we've provided everything from call volumes, differentiating between fire and EMS, community activities, fire prevention activities. We've provided our budget. So honestly, I'm going to be a little critical in the sense that if data is needed, correct, there's a hierarchy that's followed within the fire company. So obviously we would need it to either go to the chief or the president. But in terms of population base and that type of thing, honestly, I don't necessarily think that's the fire company's responsibility to provide you West Brandywine Township or East Brandywine Township's population base. I will say this. One of the other things that I often say is if I look at this and it breaks down to a 7% difference, I always said that there's a certain value
No one will
associate-
deny that. I could tell you, anybody ask me about your, and there's no one higher, in my opinion.
But there's a certain value with the fire company being located in the heart of the community, where the building is physically in the heart of the community, where a resident drives by and the doors are open and they feel safe. What that dollar amount equates to, I don't know. When we do a function, for instance, our fireworks, it is in East Brandywine Township. Creates a feeling of community. What does that equate to? If you tie this just to calls, your funding model just to calls, I would suggest that that's not ideal, correct? And again, is that a 7% increase? I don't know what that is ultimately. But I would also, and I think it's important, I think the board needs to hear this, and I want to make sure that you understand this. If for some reason, let's just say we no longer cover West Brandywine Township, there would be a significant financial impact to the East Brandywine taxpayer. It would also decrease the number of runs. I will tell you that that will impact your volunteer base. You will lose volunteers because you have to maintain a certain level of calls to attract people. People want, if they're coming down, they're training routinely, they're committed to providing a high quality service, they want to be able to go out and provide that service. So there are some intangibles here as well that are very important to consider. And one could dig their heels in and suggest that we're going to, tell them this is what we need, right? But the fact of the matter is in a negotiation, they have an alternative because they have two fire companies currently serving their community. Now, I will tell you, I don't believe that is a good alternative, but certainly as a second-class township, all that's required is to provide fire protection. That's it. It doesn't determine the quality of fire protection. It doesn't determine the proximity to where the fire company is located to your home. The reason that the district in West Brandywine Township is divvied up the way that it is because of our proximity, because we're closer to those areas. So, would it be a public relations nightmare for West Brandywine Township? Absolutely, it would be a public relations nightmare. But at the end of the day, my guess is just like everything, it's relatively short-lived.
Well,
And we discussed that as well. I had brought up the fact that, without taking any credit away from Wagontown, perhaps they should just kind of, as a business standpoint, go with what's going to work and do one, and then wait for their population to, and their own fire company to have gain the experience and knowledge from East Brandywine. But that wasn't an alternative.
And I just want to make sure, because the last thing, and I'll end with, I would hope that, the fire company and West Brandywine Township isn't put in a difficult situation because maybe messages aren't being conveyed amongst the stakeholders here in East Brandywine Township. We never want to be involved in politics. We've really worked hard to remain independent and stay out of politics. But I have to tell you that if some of that is bleeding over, where there may be difficulties in communication amongst supervisors or staff personnel, I hope you can appreciate, I'm trying to be as polite as I can. That cannot impact, because I thought they came with a thoughtful discussion. I thought some of their premises was reasonable. I think they're certainly open to discussion, certainly. And it's misleading to suggest that they're raising taxes only to support Wagontown Fire Company. It is to support providing emergency service within their community.
So, so again, how it got here, I get it. There's a shortfall. The best that I can say is, I only speak for myself, whether I can give you all of your shortfall, and I'm gonna call it West Brandywine shortfall, I am. Call it what I see. I'm gonna call it West Brandywine shortfall. Am I willing to contribute to that? I absolutely am. Maybe you would say they changed their plan around in a different scenario that fit their, but I look at facts. My politics are the people that voted for me, and trust me when I tell you, I'm gonna have 15 emails when I get home and say, why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why, you know, I try to speak off the cuff, and so everybody understands it clearly. My only holdup with this is, I think that Freedom Village should have accountability for the amount of calls. I feel bad that you guys are going there at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning to do some of these calls that, in my opinion, are a strain on your staff. That being said, I think that's what bumps you guys up to 30% more on the medical calls. Again, it's not our township, it's their township. Am I willing, me personally, to contribute more money to keep you guys? I would start working a second job tomorrow to get you guys more money. I'm right at this second, though, I'm being totally honest with you, and I know you don't want to hear this. I've had 4 or 5 pages to read regarding this. We just said that on Tuesday, the Budget Committee is meeting, I think. Is this something that the Budget Committee is supposed to be involved in too, before?
I'll speak to that. The idea of the multi-municipal committee, and again, I'm going to reiterate partially what President is your correct term now, President Edwards. I have force of, I want to say Chief. President Edwards was saying the idea of the multi-municipal committee was to do 2 things generally. One, determine how much it takes to provide excellent service, and 2, determine what a fair share of each municipality should pay towards that end. It had another great side benefit, and that is that it reduced the total number of budget presentations that the fire committee, the fire company needs to do from 3 to 1. But that was the big idea. The other part of that is it removed our budget committee, and frankly, at the point that we were forming this agreement, it removed the fire company from a conversation about what was fair in terms of that part of the scope of services for the multi-municipal committee that was determining a ratio of how it was split. And I think that Vice Chairman Fisher is correct, that the change represents a tweaking of the proportion that is not related to research that is into what actually causes wear and tear on fire companies. It is an arbitrary number, but I would also submit that the original figure was also arbitrary in as much as that we needed some rational mechanism to determine what a fair share was. Anyway, your original question is our budget committee involved? No.
Okay.
The budget committee will find a way to fund whatever request comes from this board and the multi-municipal committee.
And Luke, I'm going to disagree with you, because the purpose of that multiple municipal group is not to determine what the fair share was. That's what was done initially by the negotiation group, and we ended up with this agreement. So the purpose of that group was only to come to an agreement on the amount of money needed for that, the next budget year for the fire company, and then the agreement would determine what the fair share was. So, and I will also say that I disagree that the original funding formula was arbitrary. That was something that we arrived at using formulas used by other communities as well, and after a considerable amount of discussion on the factors. But, what I would propose at this point in time, I accept what President Edwards is telling us, that there was a rationale. I haven't heard either you or Jason articulate what that is. I would like to see that presentation myself, and I'm not digging my heels in, as you said, in the sense of not being willing to listen to it. But at this point in time, with the information in front of me, if what I'm being asked to do is to endorse changing that formula, changing the funding formula, I'm not prepared to do it. And I think we're going to need, if we're going to do that, we're going to need to get information from the fire company. I'm sure the fire company will do everything they can to supply whatever information we need. I'm not saying you're going to give us population figures. I know we have all of that stuff, but in terms of digging down into the budget, if we need to do that.
So may I ask a clarifying question? Can someone help me understand where the breakdown occurred in communication, that you don't get this information or you don't have a discussion prior to, hours before a meeting?
No.
When we had a meeting,
This is our time to talk because of the sunshine law. This is it, at this table. This is it. Same as you. You're a volunteer. I'm volunteering to sit up here tonight, exactly the same scenario.
And the point I was trying to make was, and you remember because we went through this 3 years ago, we started in January and had meetings over many, many months, arriving. We were a little bit late that year when we got into the budget process, but that took more than 6 months or more to arrive at that agreement. If West Brandywine thought the formula was unfair, we should have been notified of that in January and been working on this since then. You don't come to the budget meeting with an agreement that's already fixed, prescribes everything that's got to be done. Listen to your budget presentation, and as I understand it, as it's been suggested tonight, they ask whatever questions and they agree with your budget,
yes.
then turn around and say, well, we want to change the deal because we don't have enough money.
So I guess the question is, where do we go from here? And what are the next steps from a board perspective, recognizing to try to, it would appear like there needs to be more clarification from West Brandywine's position. So what is the best way, and I would thinking out loud, it would, to me, make the most sense to have their stakeholders, and their representative was Joe Morris, either speak with Supervisor Fisher or Supervisor Scribner directly, and or have a meeting with them.
I will see, probably next week, I will see, I will see John Castle, Supervisor Castle, at the COG meeting. So what I will do is, I will talk to him, only because I have a rapport with him. And I want to be perfectly clear. If you say to me right now, Kyle, there's a gun to your head, give me money, you're getting money. That's not the problem. The problem is, what I don't understand is why, the facts that I have, how I can, maybe we find out that this physics problem we have right in front of us with everything I've never even seen in my life, with every star and sign, is wrong. Maybe, again, I look at it and I say, yeah, I look at West Brandywine, that's why I was asking about the residents, and I look at East Brandywine, and it looks like, on the map that I don't, have you seen this map? Please step forward, just look at this map. I mean, it's clear as a bell, there's more houses, in my opinion, in East Brandywine. So are we getting a great service for, yeah. Should we maybe contribute more? Maybe. But I wasn't part of the original plan, and also, you know, like I said, there's just a mishmash tonight where it sounded to me like, and I could be wrong, maybe 40,000 was for going towards Wagontown, but then 40,000 needed to come for us. And that's why I was the numbers were just getting confusing.
They had, basically came down to, we basically had to do it and do reverse math. We had to go work with what they had to work with and base a formula on what they would basically approve to contribute. So that's how we arrived at the formula. And
Well, and recognize we're not in the room for this. The fire company
right.
is not in the room for
Right,
this.
and that's
So
why-
in terms of the ability to articulate what went on during the meeting, and, you know, as outlined by the multi-municipal committee, the supervisor who represents East Brandywine Township has to have the ability to do that. That is not the requisite responsibility of the fire company. That is of the supervisory staff.
Saying that it was your responsibility.
But what I'm saying is, Jay, if I hear Kyle say that he's hearing a mishmash of stuff, in terms of clarity, that has to come from the representative of the supervisory staff appointed to that committee by you guys.
Well, and it also needs to.
Not
come
the
from
fire company.
West Brandywine as well, because I'm kind of hurt that West Brandywine wouldn't come to us and say, hey, and that's why I'm going to talk to John. John and I.
So, Kyle, and I'd also suggest, because part of this is there's breakdowns in the communication. You can go to John Castles, but I'd recommend you go to Joe Mars, who is the representative for West Brandywine Township, who did the presentation for the committee. I would recommend you talk directly with him, because I would suggest that Supervisor Castles probably doesn't have the level of detail necessary to articulate it. And if we're having communication issues, let's make sure we're talking to the correct people. So that's why, while I understand you have a relationship with Supervisor Castles, I would challenge you that we've got to make sure we're talking to the correct people.
I have no problem, but again, remember, you came out and said it shouldn't be my responsibility to go to you guys and get this information. Their township is changing the municipal agreement. It shouldn't be my responsibility to go to them. I'm willing to do it, but it shouldn't be my responsibility. So I told you, if you asked me today, we need this money, what are we going to do? I would get a second job to do that. That's not the problem. The problem is my responsibility as taxpayers.
I just want to make sure, and then we'll end on this, at least from my perspective. At the end of the day, the budget for the fire company, the N, doesn't change. So as a board, during this period of time, and as you represent your constituents, it's important to remember that a heavier burden will fall upon the East Brandywine taxpayer in the event that West Brandywine Township is no longer under contractual agreement with the East Brandywine Fire Company. That's an important point to remember as you go through these negotiations.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. Chief wants to make a comment real quick, and then,
I just want to share something because, with the board, because this is eerily similar to the situation we had with Wallace Township when we were dealing with the regional police budget. Wallace Township did not like changes in their allocation that they had agreed to, and we had identified that Devereaux was a huge burden on the calls for service up in Wallace Township. And you had mentioned, has anybody approached Freedom Village? I don't know what their tax base is, whether they even pay taxes to West Brandywine Township. But at the time, the suggestion was made that Wallace sit down with Devereaux, because Devereaux did not pay taxes because they were an educational institution. And surprisingly, through negotiations and talks, Devereaux agreed to pay a fee in lieu of tax to the township, which helped offset the allocation for Wallace Township and still helped us maintain our budget. So I don't want, I just think it's something, you've brought it up, I think it's an excellent suggestion that at least be explored. And again, I think it would have to have the input of West Brandywine supervisors, but if what I'm hearing that this increase is being driven by Freedom Village, I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that Freedom Village may not even know about that this is even an issue. So,
They're definitely, they had a meeting scheduled. They were going to approve with Freedom Village.
okay,
But on some other matter, but that this was going to be brought up.
oh, okay.
It-
I mean,
I
it's
believe it was in
possible.
September.
I mean, I mean, I don't know what Freedom Village's budget is, but I can imagine it's multi-million dollars. 40,000 might be the pizza delivery fee that they pay every year to, on a shot. And they may be more than willing, because of the service they get from the fire company, to write a check.
Plus,
So, I just wanted to make that suggestion.
So I would definitely like to be involved if there are any discussions, or what the turnaround of the discussions with Freedom Village is, just for my own sake of it. Or, like I said, remember, you were talking about the conception of the residents. I think, that's something that I've heard from 2 or 3 people. I'm not going to say a lot, but 2 or 3 people have said, oh, I see them flying all the time down, not, flying, but, going down to Freedom Village all the time. What do they have to do down there? And I said, oh, it's the retirement community and so on and so forth. And I know, I go plowing sometimes at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I see you guys going down there. So trust me, it's more for your guys' benefit than anybody else's, I think.
but I don't think that we can.
Well, we can't
I don't
force
think that
them-
we should
No.
dictate to the fire company where they should lend their hand and services and.
So second-class township requires, and don't misconstrue how I'm going with this, but they require fire services. Is fire services considered medical services for Freedom Village?
It's required fire, medical, police, and rescue.
And where does the, if somebody is falling out of a wheelchair, is that considered a medical like, that's what I'm trying to figure out for you guys.
So to speak specifically about Freedom Village, obviously we provide fire protection. It's an enormous complex. We have been intimately involved, particularly reviewing the facility itself and pre-planned the building from a fire rescue perspective, as evidenced by the Barclay home fire and the deaths that occurred over there. That's vitally important. And then there's the medical component, right? Because they're a retirement community, a lot of elderly people, they have increased medical needs. So yes, the QRS is there frequently based on the nature of their population. We have had discussions with Freedom Village surrounding some changes in policy that they have with fall patients. They feel as though they need to be assessed medically before they're picked up and put back in bed. One could argue that they're in a facility that provides that care. So yes, we have addressed that, but you're also dealing with bureaucracy there and policy changes, and so we've been navigating that system. Additionally, West Brandywine Township supervisors have made a commitment to go to Freedom Village in order to attempt to get additional funds to fund the emergency services, to include fire rescue and EMS. So they are having those meetings with Freedom Village. So in terms of the Freedom Village component, and from our perspective, I mean, obviously, we could choose not to respond. I mean, we could make that decision, but we don't feel that that's fair to the residents of whom we serve, whether they're in a home on Corner Ketch Road or whether they reside at 15 Freedom Boulevard. So we feel strongly that we don't want to underserve the community.
No, and trust me, I applaud it. My biggest concern is if you guys are going over there for somebody who fell out of a wheelchair going to bed, and there was a possible fatality up someplace in West Brandywine, and you guys had, not wasted, but if you had resources at this unnecessary call when you could have been, that's all that concerns me, that's being
Right.
honest.
And I'll tell you what takes up, honestly, Kyle, the majority of the time. We love responding to calls. We love providing high-quality emergency service. But when we battle for funding, and this has been ongoing, I have to tell you, and I've shared this, I'm just going to be candid with you all. I've shared this, I know you all personally. The fire company has always been good stewards of the township funds. We've provided a high-quality service. We are great representatives, right? But in terms of the amount of time, energy, and resources that are consumed in having these discussions and the emotional roller coaster that it takes on not only our leadership but our team, I have to tell you that you are putting at risk, whether you choose to believe that or not, you are putting at risk your volunteers. Volunteers that currently serve the taxpayers of the state, save the taxpayers $8 billion. So we do all the heavy lifting in terms of recruitment and retention, things that other municipalities are dealing with, having to put dollars in. You don't have to do any of that. But I will tell you, this takes an emotional toll. It's exhausting, and I'd much rather be out fighting a fire or assessing someone medically than continually having these discussions. So I hope you can appreciate it. I value all of your time. I value your commitment, but I hope you can understand that at some point, we started this in earnest. I mean,
I would like to do a multi-year. I don't know why we can't do a multi-year.
It is a multi-year.
So-
It doesn't have a termination. It automatically renews unless one party chooses to get out of it.
Okay, thank you, guys. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just Ken Ader, resident and treasurer for the fire company. Just clarification for the numbers, because this is a numbers conversation. The numbers presented tonight for the percentages, I believe, was a 7% difference. The municipal contribution the fire company is requesting is $400,000. By my numbers, that's a $28,000 gap that we're talking about tonight, not $40,000.
Okay.
Just clarification.
Yeah, okay, so there was a 40,000 figure, and that's the unfortunate. I'm going to be at the 26th with the COG meeting. I'll start that process. The second thing is, let me get caught up to speed on, I would love to see the presentation that West Brandywine gave, just for my own sake of knowledge, so that I come to the table prepared with facts instead of, my mishmash statement. And I wasn't being derogatory saying it was mishmash from you. I get a page or two from Jason, a page or two from Luke, and I got a 4 or 5 pages in my packet, and I just want my facts. That's it. No big deal. As I said, there could be very well, after my looking at this, I feel as though there's more residents in East Brandywine than there is in West Brandywine. There's something to be said about that. I already told you in the fire services, we were higher fire services usage than West Brandywine was. The medical services tipped the equator, and that was where it was totally different. I just would love to know the facts of why, and what if a decision was made tonight, and then just say tomorrow Freedom Village comes out and says, here's $100,000, wishful thinking, here's $100,000. Then what? Did I do a disservice by not getting my facts? Maybe I could talk to Freedom Village with West Brandywine, maybe not. I probably don't have any value to it, but I'm willing to give the time. So, I don't know, how do you want to handle this? Do you want to revisit this after the 26th when I sit down at the COG? And there's another meeting, what was the budget committee was what, the Tuesday?
The budget committee meets on Tuesday, the 26th. This will not be an agenda item.
I would suggest, I know you're going to run into him in the 26th, but it might be worthwhile calling him in advance and maybe setting something up, because I think we have to, if I understand their threat to terminate the agreement, we have to move ahead pretty quickly because the fire company deserves to have
Oh,
this
yeah, and I'm not,
resolved.
so I didn't hear the deadline for the West Branning, say that?
Current contract will end at the end of this year unless they have till November 1st to tell you they're not going to continue with the current contract. So it has to be in writing if they're not going to continue with the current contract with the formula that had been previously agreed to, so.
So I'm not thinking that this is going to take more than the first week of October, which would be our morning session meeting anyway. And I'm willing to make a decision right then and there. As I told you, you know where I stand. It's just the devil is in the details. So can we table this until the work session then?
But I think if we're going to try to hear their presentation, we need to get those wheels rolling sooner rather than later, because
So,
you don't know that they're going to be
I'll
able to.
email Joe and Bonnie and
Okay.
Dale.
so let's do one of three things here. Our commitment is you'll have an answer by the work session, October, what is it? October,
It's the first Thursday in October.
that first. Second, I have to start with John Castle only because that's who I'm going to see first. And I can maybe set something up with him and others. That would be,
We keep going, that's who you're gonna see first. I'm happy to provide you the contact information if necessary. I'm happy to, do an introduction, if you needed to Joe. I mean, if you wanna start with John, that's great. I can provide you their contact information, this evening, if that's, I would hate that we run into somebody and have a casual conversation regarding something that's so important. That's all I'm saying. It needs to be, I think, a little more strategic.
I don't know how more strategic to be. I'm volunteering to go out and meet with people who've changed an agreement that we agreed on in your favor. I'm doing, in my opinion, more than they have done towards us. So, I'll get home tonight at 11:30. I'll be out again tomorrow at 5 a.m. So for me, I don't have the luxury of, popping over to the, excuse me, I'm talking, thank you, popping over to somebody's house tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I'm happy to do it. I'm going to be there at Wednesday night. I'm happy to sit down and talk with them. And I'm happy to go back there the next morning and do it. But like I said, the problem is I can't guarantee their schedules are going to be any easier. But you have my commitment by October, first Thursday, October 4th, you'll have at least my answer.
And I'll email Joe and Dale and Bonnie and CCU as well. I thought they did have I'm not really certain if they had a copy of their PowerPoint that they said that they could share with us, or that was Joe saying something to Bonnie about figures, but we could certainly ask for that as well to provide you with it ahead of time. Maybe it might have been my fault. I was under the impression that we were going to be having a discussion this evening over the facts and everything, not, during a public meeting rather than, via email, back and forth, and already have our minds, kind of figured out before. So maybe that was my fault for that, for not having the other board members more up to date with the facts. I thought those in the packet we were going to talk about.
And let me rest assured to tell you, you guys are my number one priority right now. I assure you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the register quote set to the markers at the addition to the park, and that's Luke.
Yes, I'd like the board's permission to hire Register Associates to mark the corners of the parcel that the township recently acquired for the trail extension from Phase 2 of the community park to the cul-de-sac on Ferndale. I'd also like to hire them to mark in a temporary fashion the corners of the park at Firethorn, the north pedestrian entrance to the park, for the purpose of planning improvements to that intersection. So the reason I've chosen Register and have no other bids before you is that they did the original layout of the property prior to our acquisition. They did the legal description and also the exhibit that you see in your packet.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we hire Register Associates for the sum of $950. Is that correct, Luke?
That is to mark the corners. That is not to, I have not gotten a quote for the temporary markings. I don't anticipate this to be more than $1,500. If I could be so bold as to ask staff to have authorization.
Motion we hire Register for a sum not to exceed $1,500 to mark the, set the four corners and do the temporary marking that's required for that project.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, request for reimbursement from Vision Partnership Program.
Right. Wouldn't you know it, this agenda item is me as well. The Appendix B that appears in your packet is the reimbursement request that goes to Chester County to get $35,000 of the $50,000 that we spent on the East-West Trail pedestrian and bicycle facilities plan. It requires the execution of the president of the governing body. I'd like to ask the board to execute my request for reimbursement.
So moved.
And I second, all in favor?
Aye.
Subdivision and zoning applications. I don't think we have any tonight, so we're going to move on to ordinance and resolution for consideration. Ordinance amendment, modified requirements for stormwater management for small project, permission to advertise.
And that was part of my discussion in my manager's report, that ordinance, although it was sent for Act 247 review, did not require that. So it is ready for the board to advertise. I will tell you that I think every person who lives in the Hideaway Farm subdivision is waiting for this ordinance to pass so they can all install their patios and decks and whatever. I've got two gentlemen who have been emailing me constantly about this pending ordinance, and I've explained to them the process all along, but they said that they're waiting for this so they can do their projects.
And would you do this at would you do this at the October 4th meeting? Because it only needs a 7-day advertisement. Do you typically do ordinances at that morning
Sometimes,
meeting?
yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll make a motion, we advertise the proposed modification requirements for stormwater management for small projects.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, public comment on agenda items. And I knew this was coming.
I'll stay off my topic because I'm more curious about the fire department and everything. Mr. Fisher, if you were a part of the inception of the multi-municipal agreement, why are you so against it 2 short years later?
I'm not against it. I'm a big fan of regionalization and cooperation. I'm not a fan of somebody coming in at the 11th hour and trying to change the deal that was negotiated previously.
Well, I think they're pretty thorough in their presentation and everything, and I think in so many words, our neighbors, being the West Brandywine residents, need our help with sustaining fire service. So if you were part of the inception of the agreement, were you only wanting to be a part of that agreement as long as it benefited you and it didn't hinder you in any way?
No, it's, the whole purpose of that agreement was to get away from the situation that we're in right now. And we keep getting drugged back in it, not because anybody has said, and you said they're thorough in the presentation. I don't think what we heard tonight was thorough at all.
Well, you didn't even scroll
You're
past the
interrupting
first
me, and I'm
page.
answering your question.
Okay.
So if you're either going to ask a question and let me answer it, or I'm not going to respond to you at all. I'm not going to have you interrupt me to have a debate.
Oh, is this a Board of Supervisors meeting or a Jay Fisher spout-off meeting?
Okay. I'm done.
The way that I understood the multi-municipal agreement was set up for X, Y, and Z from all or from all townships. And my understanding of it, based off of the facts that I've read through so far, was the X, Y, and Z was good, but then X decided they wanted to change it up a little bit,
I
which is fine. However, I don't know why they wanted to change it up, other than they said they needed to do it for their sake.
So what's your main concern here?
So my main concern is
Money.
that you as a resident and a taxpayer of East Brandywine
Yep.
comes to me and says, hey, love my fire service. And West
I
Brandywine,
do.
and West Brandywine, they love their fire service. But when there was an agreement, an X, Y, and Z agreement, and X is getting the same service as Y and Z, but paying a lot less, then you might say, as a taxpayer, that concerns me.
Well, how does the attorney who creates the agreement is now against it?
No,
He's
we're not against the
it. You don't
agreement.
understand,
We
Mr.
like the
Kennedy.
agreement.
He wants the agreement to continue the way he negotiated
So
it.
let me explain
But
this to you.
because the budget changed.
It was because of their budget
It's
change.
very,
Their budget.
Yeah,
another
their
township's
budget changed,
So
because
do you
why
feel-
was it the
so
solicitor
as a
got
resident-
fired
as a
and the
resident
township
of East
manager went
Brandywine,
to
if you're
jail?
told to pay, say, $500 a year for fire services tax,
Yeah.
and you're shared with another township, West Brandywine, and they're paying $500 per resident, I'm just giving you for instance, and then for 10 years this goes on, for instance, 500 for you in East Brandywine, 500 for the other you in West Brandywine, and then all of a sudden, we come to you and we say, you're now gonna pay $700, and we're gonna drop the West Brandywine side to $300. That's basically, in a nutshell, the easiest way to explain it. West Brandywine said they're gonna drop their fee, but they want us to pick it up.
But 2 seconds ago,
This is
you
the
said
second
you
time,
didn't
though. I think
really
that's what
have
you
a
don't
good
understand.
grasp on the information, and you barely got through 5 pages, and it was a physics problem in front of you.
Oh,
So
it
how you so
it
knowledgeable on
absolutely
that?
is a physical problem. If you
But
looked at
when the
the,
fire department wanted an answer and they were standing right here, it was a whole lot of "I don't know." And
It
when
isn't
Matt
I don't know.
Kanispewski's standing
it's,
here,
I don't
it's
know
"I
what
don't
West
know."
Brandywine is talking about. That's the problem. Until I talk to West Brandywine, I have no idea why they wanna
Well,
change it.
what point are you gonna do that, Kyle?
That's what I just said. I'll happily do it on Wednesday.
Well, it's an agenda item. Why didn't you have an assistant manager, a manager, an attorney, and an attorney sitting next to you, 4 people from the fire department, and you still don't know?
How can I answer their question without having all the facts?
How can you answer the
As-
question when you're up at
What if-
5 in the morning
What
and
if, what
out
if it
till
encounters,
midnight?
just for instance, what if I said yes and it encounters a $250 surcharge for you every year so that West Brandywine can get the same service, but you're paying for it?
Deal, just like you.
Deal?
Didn't you say you would get a second job? You can raise my taxes $250 right now.
You're-
Done.
you're-
Who did it?
You're one of many. I have
So
many-
do it. You
many
do it too then.
I can't be one of 3. That's.
Well,
not gonna
you
solve- this
you
isn't gonna
said
solve anything, though.
previously you have excellent health care from your wife's policy. So how about you?
I have excellent, no, I never said that. I pay
Well, how about
$9,000 a
you,
year.
how about you donate the cost of your health care to the fire department? How about you put your
I don't
money
have
where your mouth
healthcare.
there?
Yes.
I already have.
I think what
You
I
guys
think
were
what-
just discussing a
I don't
municipal
take
insurance.
it. I volunteered, gave it up. I don't need it. I pay $9,000 out of my own pocket for health insurance. I don't take the township health care policy.
Cool,
So that's what I'm saying. I put my money where my mouth is.
okay.
I
Well,
don't
now
think-
put your
can we
position
let's just
where
stop?
it
This
is.
isn't going to do
So
anything.
anyway, we're gonna get back to.
What I think,
If
though-
you have anything else for
I'll
agenda,
add
right
one
now,
thing, though.
what,
I think what you don't understand is Jay came up with a formula two years ago, and it worked out great. The following year, and this is to get away from having to do this every year, so the fire company can budget their, accordingly, the township can look ahead and know what they're going to be spending. But then the second year, they came at the 11th hour and said, we can't do this. So it went actually back down below that last year. And then they came again, and we were going to try to get back up to the standard with the same formula. And they did it again. They went through the whole meeting and then said,
I
well, we can't do
totally
that.
I totally get it back and forth because it's a board of 3 people over there. And I feel bad for the constituents who are now not gonna have a fire department because 3 people who don't read the paperwork and everything. Now our 3 people aren't sticking up for it.
we, by second-class township, we're required to provide fire services for East Brandywine. You will always have fire services, no questions asked. What I don't like is a poker hand where another township that we split says, we want East Brandywine to pay more because we want to pay less. I get that they have financial problems, but why should you, as a resident of East Brandywine, supplement their lack of, I'm willing to do it, but it's not right. We're a board of three, we have to make decisions, and we need the facts. That's what I said from the beginning of the night.
You say at every single meeting, you're a facts guy, but when the facts are presented to you, you don't even look at them.
I'll tell you what, you have a half an hour before the meeting to read that entire thing. You have emails.
I'll read that in a half an hour, know more about you before you get into the parking lot.
Okay, all right, anything else for non-agenda, or for agenda items? Yeah, well, I'm gonna anything else?
Do you have an anticipated answer for your October 6th? Are you going to do this
I already
behind
said,
closed
if
doors?
you asked me today, and I told that.
Said you were
Rich-
going to reach out to the guy personally, where the or the fire president asked it to be done in an open venue.
Well, it's gonna be an open venue, on the Thursday, October 4th meeting, and I'm gonna give him my answer then. I pretty much already told you guys, I'm one of three. I gave you where my thought process was today. I couldn't have been more clear.
I've been coming to every one of these meetings since April, and I've watched a pattern. Every single first responder that comes in here gets argued with. Every single constituent who comes in here gets argued with. Every single developer, hey, what can I do for you?
Disagree.
It will be done
Disagree.
today.
Disagree. All right,
On
so,
video.
do we have any notices? Other than I do want to say that the Board of Supervisors did meet in executive session on September 6th to discuss legal and personnel matters. And tonight, the Board of Supervisors is hoping to meet for executive session to discuss legal matters. Any motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And I second. All in favor?
Aye.